Hello, Politics Plus Media 101 listeners. We are back at it again. Mr. John Gunnison is currently on holiday traveling, but it's been a while since we last spoke to you. Our last episode was on the potential of President Biden dropping out, why that was necessary and a good choice. Since then, President Biden has dropped out, Kamala Harris has wrapped up the nomination, and J.D. Vance has become former President Trump's VP pick. But today, to go over really all of this and specifically political messaging and what has been and has not been effective is my dear friend, Andrew Lawrence, who's also Deputy Director of Rapid Response at Media Matters. And we are going to discuss all the happenings in the world of media and politics. So, Andrew, I want your take on the state of the election to start off, because it feels like we've experienced a 180-degree turn from when President Biden was running to now VP Harris being the nomination.
Yeah, I was on vacation all of last week, and when I left, Joe Biden was still the nominee. The Republicans were coming off of their convention, which was widely praised as being a huge, gigantic success. I go on vacation for 5 days, and I come back, and there's a new Democratic nominee. There's all this excitement. The polls are shifting. There's new messaging that's working, and it's just like a 180-degree vibe shift. And I guess it's kind of a reminder of how quickly things move here in 2024.
The prevailing thought process before that debate, which was an absolute debacle, was that, yes, Biden is too old, but it's too late to switch out the nominee. And kind of just seeing how quickly everything you described happened has transpired in, the world we live in, with social media, with the 24-hour news cycle, with TikTok, which is kind of both of that, right? The videos and social media. I guess that what happens now in a week is what used to happen over the course of months.
Sure. Well, I also think that it's just kind of a reflection of the political environment that Donald Trump has created, and Fox News and right-wing media and conservative media. I mean, their entire strategy for the last 8 years since 2016, Steve Bannon said it, just throw shit against the wall. Just keep throwing stuff out there, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And when, we're all conditioned to that now, like everybody. It's been 8 years of that nonstop. And so it's just, this is the way that things move. I mean, we just got into everything that's happened over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. We didn't even talk about an assassination attempt on one of the candidates as something else that everybody has just forgotten about and moved on from. And, that's really, I thought that this would work, that switching nominees would work for exactly this reason. Because once you do it, everybody just accepts it and moves on. And that's just the environment that we're living in right now, I think.
When the assassination attempt happened, not right when it happened, but a couple days after, we were having a discussion on the media coverage and, just everything about it. Who was the perpetrator? How would this impact the race? How is the media covering it? And you're like, dude, this will be out of the news cycle in a week or two. And looking back at it, now that you mention it, I haven't thought about the assassination attempt sans the Secret Service director saying some stupid shit in front of Congress or some new report coming out. I really don't think it is in the media cycle anymore, is it?
It's not. I mean, it's just completely forgotten about. And not only that, but, I want to throw the Republican convention out there as well. Like, they just came off of a convention where they were unified. They were all happy. They were cruising to a landslide victory. That was a week ago. And now polling averages are starting to come out with Kamala on top. And it's this whirlwind that we live in. I think, the biggest question for Democrats is if they're going to be able to sustain this for the next 4 months, given how fast the news cycle moves. Are they going to be able to sustain this type of momentum? I mean, I think they will, because right now the focus is always on Trump, and he wants the focus always on him. And given their new line of attack, I think that benefits Democrats 100%.
And I do think if we go back to the paradigm when the convention was happening for the GOP, it was right after the assassination attempt. President Biden was coming off of that awful debate attempt. The Democratic Party, and you had commentators like me and John and other folks pretty much saying this needs to happen. This guy needs to go. So you had all of this Democratic infighting. So at that time, I do think that with the caveat that Trump gave a speech that was batshit crazy, that was as hateful as ever, that was as incoherent as ever, but that was really the best that the Republicans could have hoped for. And looking back at this, as we've discussed, they weren't attacking VP Kamala Harris because she wasn't the nominee. So they
spent their entire week, their entire convention attacking the wrong candidate, and their entire convention, it was widely praised at the time, but I'm sitting there watching that thinking like, what does a soccer mom think about seeing Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt? Like that's entertaining. That's fun. Like, it's great. But there's serious issues going on in this country. And I do think that the majority of independent voters want serious people in charge, while this stuff is going on. So, you've got Tucker Carlson coming out. You got JD Vance with his cat lady comments. You've got Kid Rock out there, all right before Trump comes out. Yeah, Dana White, a guy on video slapping, hitting his wife. It's crazy.
Hitting the shit out of her.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's crazy. So all of that, and they spent their entire convention trying to get their base pumped up. Their base was already pumped up, and in the meantime, you have the independent and the undecided and low information voters that are walking past their TV, seeing the Republican convention, and they're seeing, Hulk Hogan up there yelling, like, what are you all doing? It just, I don't know. The last 2 weeks have been insane, and I can't believe that it's only been 2 weeks.
But looking back at this, Andrew, considering that everybody would agree one of the major weaknesses for the Trump campaign heading into this election is suburban women, which is usually parlance code in politics for upper middle class white women who live right outside the city, right? And folks were saying that even though they may be married to conservatives, even though they may hold conservative viewpoints, two things would turn them off. One being abortion, and the other being Trump's just egregious lack of character, no ethics, no morals. And looking back at this, I've really only thought about it for the first time with you. You had Kid Rock, who's just off-putting to everybody, I feel like, unless you're kind of, a MAGA redneck diehard. But you also had a bunch of people that have been alleged of having sexual assault, beating their wives, and just generally folks that would not only not resonate with this segment of voter, but would actively turn them off. So do you think they were even thinking about who they were putting on stage and how that would be perceived by these voters? Or was it Trump being like, oh, Hulk Hogan, big, strong, I like?
Oh, it's absolutely the latter. I mean, you think about it, dude. I was thinking about this during the convention that night. Introducing Trump, you had two people who have public sex tapes out there, Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan. I guess Hogan's isn't public anymore, but these are the type of people that they brought out there to appeal to middle America and undecided voters and upper middle class white women. It's bananas, but this is what they're doing now. This is the appeal to the base. It's all that Trump does. And look, it's weird. It's really fucking weird.
Okay, so the Republicans had this almost fool's gold experience with their convention. They were all riding high, even though they knew that their candidate was a freak after that ridiculous speech he gave, where everybody said going into that speech, this is going to be a new Trump. His tone is going to be changed, which in of itself is absolutely asinine. So I want to get into Kamala Harris becoming the VP, because that's basically when you came back from vacation. And more specifically, how the right-wing media and the surrogates that you see on these shows reacted to her becoming the president.
Yeah, the nominee. Yeah, it's been they're just flailing. They have no idea what to do. Sean Hannity, we monitor everything. We monitor all right-wing media. Sean Hannity has a 3-hour radio show in addition to his TV show on Fox News. And his radio show today, he's just going off about Kamala flip-flopping. Like anyone cares about that type of stuff anymore. Like nobody cares about that anymore. They have no idea what they're doing. You had Jesse Waters, Fox News host, earlier today, about an hour ago, attacked Kamala Harris for liking food. He was like, she likes food, she likes to drink, she's a mediocre person. Like they have nothing, and they have just been so caught off guard. They have spent the last 4 years talking about how old Joe Biden is, his cognitive decline, and Hunter Biden. All three of those things are just completely off the table now. I haven't heard Hunter Biden's name since I've been back. Like he's just not out there anymore. Nobody cares about him anymore. They don't know what to do. Kamala doesn't have a Hunter Biden. She doesn't have a laptop. These are the things that they need. These are the things that they're addicted to, and now it's just not there available for them. And I guess they're kind of going through withdrawals a little bit.
It almost reminds me of Stockholm syndrome, where like the victim starts to identify, with the bully, because these are the very same people that would like to sacrifice these white men on the altar of diversity, right? Which we all know that diversity is code for getting rid of white men, right?
It struck me with President Trump because the way that he would attack her outside of the thinly veiled, if veiled at all, racist attacks on her IQ level and things of that sort was her laugh. And it's like, dude, one of the most endearing things to me about my friends is you guys all have weird laughs. It's all different. It's unique. It's an interpersonal thing.
Like everybody has a weird laugh. Yeah. And, it's just like, if you're laughing, you're happy. Like, go ahead and show her being happy, I guess, in your ads. Like I've never seen Donald Trump laugh once. I can't recall. Like, I don't think I've ever seen him laugh. And also, like I said, there are serious issues in this country. Like we are dealing with some serious shit. Nobody cares if the candidate is the best candidate and they have a weird laugh. Nobody cares, dude. Like nobody cares. Why? It's just, but this is what they're addicted to. They're addicted to this I don't even know. It's just this nonsense, this nothing, and it makes no sense. I don't know who they're trying to appeal to with this type of stuff, other than their hardcore online base.
Who will go along with anything, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They don't care. Yeah, they don't care. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It makes no sense. It's one of the greatest political implosions I've ever seen.
I agree with you 100% on basically everything you've said. And I think that this leads us to another point. You were mentioning go show her while she's laughing, while she's happy. Obviously, that resonates with voters. Her laugh is also confident, right? She's not holding it in. It's like a part of who she is. She's wearing it. She's owning it. She's even spoken about it exactly in these terms, almost just much more eloquently, because she's the VP of the United States, an extremely accomplished person and absolutely brilliant. The point that I'm trying to make here is that it feels like their attacks are actually elevating strengths of VP Harris. And I go back to the coconut analogy.
Right.
That is, if you could actually explain it to folks, the coconut analogy.
Oh, sure. Yeah. She has this saying, and I'm going to mess it up because it's very complicated and ridiculous, but she says it every now and then. And she says that her grandmother used. Oh, it is. It's true. It's 100% true, and it's deep. Yeah, you're right. But she says her grandmother used to say, "What did you just fall out of a coconut tree?" Meaning that like you, the way she puts it is, you exist among like all the things that have been and all the things that are occurring in the present. That's essentially how she explains it, and Republicans glommed onto that, thinking that like it was some sort of negative thing to highlight of hers. And it's become a meme. You've got people like posting coconut emojis next to their names on Twitter now. And people talking about being coconut pilled and stuff like that. And because it's not like, even though it might be a little weird, it's not like a negative, like it's not a negative type of thing. To think like that, and it's also 100% true. And I don't know, man. Like if going after her for her laugh is the best that you have, then you're screwed. Then the campaign is over. Like it's over, and they will lose if that is your best hit against your nominee, is that they have kind of a weird laugh.
And you were on vacation, but John and I were just following this intently because I was despondent, dude, when Biden wasn't
I
Trump.
know you were. We talked.
You know this, but for our audience, it really affected me. I'm like,
I was begging you to put your phone down and stop scrolling because every 15 minutes it was like, yo, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't take it.
Yeah, you're like, dude, this is going to give you a stroke. And it made me think of like,
yes.
playoff hockey. And I'm like, yes, I might have a stroke. But it's amazing because like you said, the department at the RNC that I used to work for, RNC Research, which is now a cesspool and an embarrassment. It used to at least be professional, regardless of the sewage that was being spewed. They're the ones responsible, like you said, for clipping this meme. And as President Biden was coming nearer and nearer and nearer to dropping out, all that I would see on TikTok, on Twitter, on other videos were far left progressives saying that they just fell out of a coconut tree. And it was like almost this rallying cry from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy. And look, the Republicans, like there are plenty of substantive issues that they could go after Kamala on, but they can't because their incel red-pilled base doesn't want that. They don't want that. They want Trump to make fun of her for being a woman. They want Trump to make fun of her for her laugh and for the way she dresses and the way she walks and for her accent and stuff like that. And that's what he's giving them, And meanwhile, like he's tanking in the polls and the campaign is completely imploding. But they're addicted to it. They're addicted to this. It's just so bizarre. These bizarre attacks that don't mean anything. It's all just like, I think what they're trying to do is just dangle keys in front of the American electorate until election day and hope that it works. It just makes no sense to me at all.
And I didn't watch this event, but one thing you left out, which there's just so many things, but they want Trump to attack her for being black. And at the journalist event, he was saying that she wasn't black. And it was the most bizarre type of line of attack, offensive, especially to the audience he was saying it to, that I think I've ever seen clipped.
Yeah, well, and this is, I'm glad you brought this up because something that I've noticed and the difference sort of between 2016 and 2020 is that attack on Kamala, that was yesterday, right? Yeah, that was yesterday. In 2016, that would have been a 2-week-long story. You would have had outrage from the media. That would have been one day. The next day, you would have had people demanding an apology from him. The next day, you would have had him saying he's not going to apologize. Then you'd have people asking Republicans, what do you think about this?
And Paul Ryan would distance himself.
Yeah, barely, just barely, And then the next day, Trump would double down and it would all start back over again, Right now, everybody's just like, dude, that's gross. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And moving on, because like that's what he is. I really think that people are just numb and like this type of thing that worked for Donald Trump in 2016 to get media attention is just not working anymore. It's not. And it's got to be driving him insane.
Yeah, people are inured to it. We're used to this bullshit.
I also think that being 8 years older than he was in 2016, I think the Trump campaign knows that they can't put him out there the way that they did in 2016. In 2016, he was doing interviews with MSNBC. I remember him going on Chris Matthews, and that's where he got in trouble for saying that women should be punished if they get an abortion, But they would throw him out there on ABC News, MSNBC, CNN, wherever. And right now he's doing, the Donald Trump Jr. podcast and Sean Hannity and Nick Fuentes, and stuff like. I don't think he's been on Nick Fuentes, but it's that type of like groyper red.
Well, he had him to dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Close.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and he's not out there the way that he was in 16 either. And I think all of these things are kind of accumulating to where like no one cares about you anymore, dude. Like just nobody really cares anymore.
It's interesting that you brought up the difference between 2016 and now 2024, because it was even kind of like this in 2020 because he was president, right? So you had to kind of listen to what he was saying. At the RNC, we ran a disciplined campaign. It was very professional. There were some, awful people there, but they were damn good at their jobs. And no matter what we did, dude, we set up the infrastructure around him, the surrogates. but it was really the media was driven by Trump. Like you said, he would go out there, do something funny and good, which would be less often, or do something horrible and bad and grotesque. And the media cycle was revolving around him like he was the sun, right? And everybody else was the earth. I think what I'm trying to get at is I agree with you that everybody's kind of seen it all. The media has taken a different approach, right? CNN, I'm saying, like MSNBC maybe to a lesser extent, but they're not hyper focused on all of the ridiculous things he's saying. So from my perspective, what he needs now more than ever, which he will never get, is he needs discipline. And he needs to listen to a traditional campaign so that all of the surrogates are aligned, your research is aligned, your events are aligned, it's crescendoing, it's building up to something, and then he can go out there and give his event so that he can drive coverage, maybe not like he used to, but drive coverage a little bit. Now the only time he drives coverage is when it is something terrible, and it'll be like 6 hours of the news, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everybody just kind of shrugs their shoulders and is like, screw him. Like, I'm not voting for him, you know? But like, I mean, like you said, if he was disciplined, blah, 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 he's not disciplined. Like, he can't do it. But this is also his bread and butter. And like, I think deep down, he, and probably a lot of the campaign staff think that the way that they are going to win the election is the same way they did in 2016 by just kind of being controversial and getting media attention no matter what, that there's no such thing as bad press. And the thing is, I mean, maybe to a certain degree that's true, but right now he's just not getting any press anyway. I mean, even that black journalist thing was yesterday. It's barely a blip on the radar anymore. And I think that it's out there. Everybody saw it, and the negativity is built in. But he's not getting the positivity of being, one his appeal in 2016 was that he was antagonizing people that you didn't like, and there isn't that element to it anymore. Like, everybody already knows that he's antagonizing the people that you don't like, and nobody really cares about that anymore. Like, it's just not a driver like it was 8 years ago.
And I do think, we should take a step back, realize the context we're in. Things may change. Maybe the media starts covering him differently. And maybe part of the reason why he's not getting the coverage that he thinks he deserves or is entitled to, is probably a better term, is because we did just go through a historic event where the president of the United States said, no, I'm not capable of running an election. So I'm going to drop out. And then Kamala Harris comes in. And the wagon circled, Andrew. She's raised, like, in 2 weeks, $310 million. In 2020, and you can go into this better than I can, I believe a lot of progressives hated her to their core because they would call her Top Cop Kamala. And now on Twitter and these social media scenes, they're like, we need Top Cop Kamala. These people that are like ACOB and
no, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I'm pretty plugged in, I think, to the progressive left, particularly online. And, I think that the calculation was made that Trump is a fascist and we have to stop fascism no matter what. Like, I want to give progressives and the left a lot of credit for being that pragmatic. And I also think that people were just, I feel like there was a sense of national relief when Joe Biden stepped down. That, like, we don't have to choose between these two old guys. Like, we can turn the page on the politics of the last 10 years. And I think the progressive left really felt that, and I think that there are issues that she's certainly more progressive than Joe Biden on, that have been highlighted by the left, and I think it's very pragmatic. I think that, it's really encouraging to see sort of people come to that conclusion and sort of assist in the effort of not just making it clear that she would have support if Democrats went that way, but also in just rallying around her, and putting the fear of fascism, man. The stuff that they are proposing is honestly so terrifying if they get into power. And I think that I think that the left, I think the Democrats, even with Joe Biden at the helm, as a nominee, I think they did a really good job of laying that out with Project 2025.
Yeah, and as my dad used to say, you're saying the fear of fascism, and that's why I was so despondent, right? I'm like, holy fuck, we are going to have a fascist in office again if President Biden doesn't drop out. He drops out. It's a huge sense of relief. As my father used to say, I feel like the progressives, the moderates, hell, even your current Republicans that are anti-Trump, we're all in a foxhole, and the threat of Trump is like the incoming fire. And as my dad used to say, there's no atheists in foxholes, and that's tongue in cheek. It doesn't mean it's literally true, but it's like we're all so scared shitless. We're praying to something, right?
I think that, like, look, for me, I work at Media Matters, and if you don't know what Media Matters is, we're a progressive media watchdog group. We go after Fox News, we go after the right wing, conservatives, all that type of thing. And looking at the ticket, Donald Trump is the only candidate that I'm not 100% certain won't send me to jail just for working at Media Matters. It might only be a 1% chance, but it's, he's the only one that's not 100% certain. And I think that there's, women out there, no matter who you are, if you're a woman, Donald Trump is the only candidate that you can't be 100% certain won't send you to jail if you travel across state lines when you're pregnant. I think if you're Latino, Donald Trump is the only one that you're not 100% sure isn't going to round you up and put you in a concentration camp. And I think, all of those, like, it sounds ridiculous, but it's all true. Like, it's all, the plans are there. They're all laid out. And I think that, the reason why there was such a freak out over Joe Biden, his tanking numbers, is because of this fear, because it is so realistic, actually, that they were actually going to do it this time. They could actually do it this time if they get power.
So let's shift a little bit into why the Democrats have been so effective at harnessing this fear, right? Because 2016, you had plausible deniability. Businessman, New York liberal is going to come in, say what he wants to say to get elected. Maybe he'll change, right? That became apparent throughout the campaign that was not a true narrative, and that was never going to happen. Then through his presidency, right, you have people arguing, well, he was good with the economy. He shut down illegal immigration relative to previous highs. They were making all of these arguments for him. But since the failed coup attempt that was 100% inspired by, driven by President Donald Trump, he wanted to march with these freaks on the Capitol and try and go hang his vice president. Like that is pretty crazy. Since that point, at least in my mind, it's been abundantly clear to absolutely everybody that Trump is an existential threat to democracy and that he could do some crazy shit that you just described, no matter how remote the chance is. So you have no sense of security if you're in any of these marginalized groups or if you like democracy. But that was 2021. That was January 6th, 2021, Andrew. It's now August 2nd, 2024. And it feels like the attacks that the Biden administration, the congressional Democrats were leveling against Trump, he's this fascist, he's this existential threat to democracy, we're not breaking through. So in addition to Harris and all the energy and the circling of the wagons, and now we're all enthused, what was there a messaging change that you think? I know what it is. I know what you're going to say, but I want to get into it.
Yeah, no, I know what it is too, because I'm very excited about it. But yeah, they started calling them weird. They started calling them weird freaks, and it is working, and it is working more than anyone could have ever thought it would work. I mean, it has been a magical way to describe conservatives and the Republican Party. And I think there's a million different reasons for this, but I think that, first of all, humor and mockery work. It just does. Like, making fun of these people, making them small. When we just spent 10, 15 minutes describing how dangerous they are, and that is true. They are dangerous, but that has an appeal to a bunch of people, to the base of his party, being edgy and being a little scary and having people like cross the street when you walk towards them because you're wearing a MAGA hat. And, that type of thing, it gives people the feeling of power. And, when Tim Walz called J.D. Vance weird, and you had the Harris campaign put out a press release calling them old and weird, it makes them small. It takes them out. It takes away that danger, that fear, that edginess. There isn't any of that. They're just freaks and out of the mainstream, and nobody wants that. And you don't want that, do you? No, of course I don't want some weirdo to be my president. And then you take a look at Donald Trump, and he's moist, and he's a little doughy, and he's talking about sharks being electrocuted and Lord only knows what, just
windmills
nonsense.
give you cancer because of the vibration.
Yeah. and it's weird, dude. It's absolutely weird. So that's another reason why I think that this messaging is working is because it's true. Because these people are weird freaks. I have been watching Fox News and studying conservative media with Media Matters for going on 8 years now, and it's weird. Like, it's really weird. You have Tucker Carlson out there doing specials about tanning your testicles. You have them getting mad about M&M mascots not being sexy enough. All of these things are like, it's just so bizarre to the average person. And when it comes down to it, like, we're talking about people that are going to have their fingers on the nuclear codes, So I think there's a bunch of reasons why this messaging has worked. And I just think it's fun. Like, you and I, we're on video right now for anybody who can't see it. And every single time one of us calls them weird, like, we smile. Like, it's funny, it's hilarious, but then at the same time, it is true. They are freaks, and I think that is starting to break through. I think there's sort of an element where we see these politicians on our TV, and anybody on TV is kind of a character, right? Like, you're kind of a TV character. But when you start thinking of them as people, and you're like, wait a minute, this guy, JD Vance, he's a 39-year-old dude. He's a politician, and he thinks that families with children should get more votes than people without children. Like, that's like, when you start thinking about it like that, it's just weird, and it starts to break through, and it destroys this mystique.
If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.
Stop it! Oh, it's so weird. Stop. You know what? You are sick.
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah. Well, you're known for saying outrageous things, Mr. Trump. Who are you, Woody Allen?
I agree. So for the audience, our audience understands that John and I have been calling them weird freaks for years, Andrew, right? What comes to my mind is not even before the Bud Light boycott. They're boycotting football, dude, where 100 million people in America watch football games, like the Super Bowl Sunday. They are attacking the most popular thing. It's like, you are fucking weird if you are doing that. So we've been talking about it, in kind of this high-minded way, because we get a little bit nerdy and we go into all the confounding factors on this podcast. But you have been calling them weird in a very simple, funny way on Twitter for what, 5-6 years?
Yeah, at least since 2020. I think since 2018 was the first time that I said it after the midterms.
So everybody should know on this podcast that is listening right now, I accredit it being picked up to Andrew, because he has been consistent since 2020, right? At least 2020, he's been calling them weird on social media, in public. I personally, I associate it with their attack on trans people. The way that Andrew puts it is, they're weird freaks that want to look at and legislate your children's genitalia. Like, that is fucking weird.
They want a nameless government. They want a nameless government bureaucrat to perform a genitalia check on your child before they play sports.
Yes,
that's what they want. It's weird.
I also want to run this by you too. Let's be realistic. Kamala Harris is eccentric. In some ways, you could say that she's a little bit odd. She's very confident. Not all people are confident. Her laugh is rather loud and out there. However, I think that because of her confidence and because of what you hit on earlier, she's always smiling. She's this happy warrior. She's somebody you want to be around. That her being eccentric is not a bad thing. I think part of the reason why the weird attack is resonating is because of the folks like I used to work for in Congress. Not only are they weird, not only do they have eccentric mannerisms, not only do they have an insatiable lust for power, but more specifically, dude, they're fucking mean. Like, at their core, all of their weird policies are because they are mean. And when you call somebody weird, you were just talking about when you're watching somebody on TV, it's this character, specifically a politician, right? Their hair is perfectly coiffed. They're wearing this beautiful $2,000 suit with this perfect red or blue tie. And they're going to give you talking points that are bullshit and that sound pre-prepared. And you watch them and you forget about them. But the weird thing is breaking through and latching on from my perspective. It's because they are mean. And when you hear weird, like if you or I are out at a bar and we're saying somebody's weird, it's not because they're different. It's because they're doing something really off-putting. And at a visceral level, the weirdness when you label J.D. Vance weird for attacking people that don't have children and attacking cats, you're like, damn, that is gross. And then somebody like you says they're weird. And you're like, oh, they are weird.
Well, I think that, first of all, I certainly wasn't the first person to notice that conservatives are weird, so, and I have been getting a lot of credit for it, and I really do appreciate that, but certainly wasn't the first. But one thing that I will take credit for is I think I identified it as an incredibly effective message politically for Democrats if they pushed it, and I pushed that, that was the whole point of me pushing it. Is that's the reason why they lose elections, is because they're a bunch of weird freaks, to get to your point about, Kamala's weirdness versus the other weird, like there's a difference between like, I like pineapple on my pizza weird versus pregnant women shouldn't be allowed to travel across state lines weird, like it's very obvious to anybody in this discussion who's not a conservative trying to defend themselves. But like, I'm sitting there and I'll tweet out like, hey, conservatives are weird. And my replies are full of conservatives going, like, shoving pictures of genitals in my face, going, oh, yeah, I'm weird. Well, what about this? Like, yeah, that's weird. Like, you are weird for shoving genitals in my face. Like, you all don't get it, So, yeah, I mean, it's there's sort of been this feedback loop created that I didn't really anticipate, to where they're being called weird, and their defense to being called weird is to be even weirder. And then it creates this feedback loop where it's just sort of, the point proves itself over and over and over again. Which is just really hilarious to me. But it was another point that you had made that I totally
that they're mean, they're antisocial, so it's sticking.
This is something that I really wanted to not even get into, but just a point that I really wanted to make here is that the Republican Party with Trump, their entire raison d'etre, their entire reason for being, is to antagonize the left, liberal tiers, owning the left, pwning the left, just everything, antagonizing anyone who does not agree with them 100% and isn't fully on board. And right now, they are in complete freefall because they don't understand why people don't like them. It's like, dude, you've been calling people cucks for the last 8 years if they don't agree with you. Of course, we don't like you. Like, what did you expect? What did you expect? Like, yeah, you're mean, you're weird, you're mean, and your ideas are terrible. That's why people aren't voting for you, and they can't get it through their goddamn skulls. It's insane.
What is it? Soy boy latte drinking?
Yeah,
it's like,
I forgot about it.
Like lattes. Like, I like soy in my lattes sometimes. Like, that's not that weird.
Right.
And so I want to move on to, well, first, from my perspective, I'm not saying that you share this view. The Republican Party has obviously changed over the last 10 years since Trump has become the leader of it. Just look at who he appointed. He didn't appoint even somebody like Mike Pence, who maybe has these weird views, but he wouldn't necessarily say them in the hateful and own the left type of way. It was more dogmatic, right? It was like, okay, this guy's a true evangelical religious believer. He turned me off. I'm sure he turned you off, but he wasn't J.D. Vance, who's doing it, like you just said, to absolutely just piss people off at their core. Mike Pence was doing it because they believed it. He believed it. And the point that I'm trying to get to is the Republican Party started with these group of weirdos, the House Freedom Caucus, right? And it was just these people. And if you walk around the halls of Congress, they're extremely antisocial. It's the Jim Jordans of the world. It's the Mick Mulvaney's even. It's folks that just don't like being around other people and who would say stuff to piss others off. And I would say that back in that Republican Party, you had the faces of the Republican Party were Paul Ryan put together, Mitt Romney put together, John McCain, who was considered a hero. He was a hero. So it would have been much more difficult from my perspective to just brand the whole Republican corral as these weird freaks. But I think part of why it's resonating now is because the people that we are seeing on TV, Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley, JD Vance, Trump, Mike Johnson, they legitimately are weird freaks. Is there any weight from your perspective to the party evolving in a way that now highlights these extreme voices and that being part of the reason why it's resonating more?
Oh, 100%. And I agree with you, going back to the House Freedom Caucus and the Tea Party and all of that. I just think that this is a natural progression, that it all happened exponentially and it built on itself. And, you have one Republican politician that steps out of line just by a toe, and they're going to get primaried by some weird freak who's going to say the weird freakish shit that you need to say to win a Republican primary. If you don't go out there and if you don't attack single women for being single women, then you're not going to get on Tucker Carlson's show. You're not going to get on Jesse Waters or Laura Ingraham. But you know who is going to get on there? The weird freak that's primarying you, who is going to go out there and say it. And then they're going to win the primary. And then you know what happens? You're going to lose the general election because you're a weird freak. And it just sort of builds on itself. And I agree with you. I think this all started, back even a little bit further. I mean, we all remember birtherism with Obama and Barack Hussein Obama and all of that type of crap. It all started back there. And now we're, maybe 10 election cycles past that when you consider midterms and all of that. And it's all just working itself out naturally. You have Republicans are getting out-weirded by these weird. Marjorie Taylor Greene should not be in Lauren Boebert should not be in office. Like, these people should not be in Congress. But they got into Congress by saying what they had to do to get on the Tucker Carlson show, to get on the Jesse Waters show. And then they built themselves this profile. And you know what? You have all these legitimate establishment Republicans now taking them under their wing and empowering them and giving them powerful positions and putting them out there in the spotlight. And it is turning off the majority of Americans. The majority of humanity doesn't care about somebody else's genitals. They don't care about how they dress. They just don't. And if you care about that type of stuff, they're going to think that you're weird.
Especially in the black community, are being treated unfairly because of how they look.
It's a children's show. Got that, Bobby? America is a very bad place, and it's your fault. So no matter what happens, no matter what they do to you when you grow up, you have no right to complain. That's the message, and it starts very young.
And as you were bringing up those names, dude, I haven't heard much about Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert lately. And I think that goes to our point about their ability to control these news cycles. I don't think it exists nearly as much, right? Like, it's pretty weird that you're a sitting member of Congress jacking somebody off in a movie theater that was caught on tape, but like, she's not even able to get press at this moment. So considering everything, considering the landscape we're in, considering how far the Republicans have gone to the extreme side, to the weird side with all these freaks, can they pull themselves out of it? Let's start with the election. Is there any way that they can change this narrative and just stop being so weird over the next 3 or 4 months with Trump at the top of the ticket?
No. Well, I mean, you answered your own question with Trump at the top of the ticket. Like, he's a weird freak, dude. And we just saw they have been getting hammered. Their polling is tanking. I attribute a lot of it to this weird attack for a messaging from Democrats. And they spent the last 2 days talking about racial purity and an Olympian's genitalia. They can't help themselves. And the reason why is because that's what gets retweets. That's what gets engagements. That's what gets these podcasters subscribers and listeners and all that, is by talking about genitalia and racial purity. And there's just this what's that snake, Ouroboros snake that's just eating its own tail over and over and over again because they can't.
Human centipede, Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. It's a human centipede of this weirdness, and that they don't see it, or maybe they do see it and they're just addicted to it.
Yeah, Andrew, and you were saying this is what gets likes and retweets, and I opened up X, and I opened up TikTok, and I saw all these people arguing over this Olympic boxer. I don't care. I don't want to see it.
Who cares?
Right? And that's what they're hyper focused on.
Yeah, nobody cares. Like, I mean, who is that for other than your hardcore podcast subscribers and the people that are retweeting you? It's not for anybody. And it's just feeding into the current Democratic messaging that is hammering your chances at electoral victory. But dude, they are addicted to it. Because like over the last 8 years, that's who they have. Laura Loomer is a lunatic. And if you don't know who she is, she's a lunatic. And she has been elevated to star status in conservative media because she's out here publicizing Kamala's birth certificate to try to prove that she's not black. Like, it's insane. But
for our audience, Laura Loomer is somebody who is severely mentally ill. Like when Andrew says lunatic, like she is she's danger to other people around her. She needs to seek help. So she's the worst of the worst. And Trump was just the other day, 2 days ago, praising her on stage, despite Laura Loomer saying all these horrible racist shit. She was making fun of former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords for somebody who tried to assassinate her and the long-lasting health issues that former Congresswoman Giffords and her husband, Senator and former astronaut Mark Kelly, have to navigate on a daily basis. Like, it doesn't really get more despicable than Laura Loomer, and Trump was just on stage praising her. So, okay, let's get to the GOP post-Trump, because I think we both agree that they are going to be weird. I'd go even further to say, and I know I've said this to you and John, the racist attacks, the prejudice attacks that turn off these suburban white women, and quite frankly, all women and most voters, no matter their demographic, are just going to increase as the polling gets worse. So in our parlance, they're just going to double down and triple down on weird, and it's going to have this death spiral effect on the polls. But do you think there's any hope for the party to get out of being weird?
Well, I mean, I'm incredibly far left, so far be it for me to offer advice to the Republican Party. And I don't really have advice because I think that they are so addicted to this. It's the only thing that they know. They've been conditioned to it by the last decade. It's all they've done for the last 10 years. So it's all that they know how to do. And, I think the only possible way that this ends is that the billionaires funding these weirdos get sick of not getting a return on their investment. They are dumping tens, hundreds of millions of dollars into politicians and conservative media. Somebody like Charlie Kirk would not have a podcast without billionaires funding him. Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Daily Wire, their subscriber base now, they would not have gotten a start if it had not been for billionaire funding. You can go down the list. All of these people that are being funded by these billionaires, and eventually, even if it's just $1 million here or there, which is nothing to a billionaire, but these people did not get rich by just throwing money away for no reason. That's really the only way that I can see it happening, because the truth is the incentive structure in the Republican Party as constructed right now is for weirdness. It's to out-weird the other podcast hosts. It's to out-weird the other people on Twitter. It's to out-weird the other politicians. And, without the funding being cut off by these billionaires who are throwing their money away for no reason, I don't see it changing. I really don't. And you started this question off by saying, like, post-Trump, there isn't going to be a post-Trump until he's gone, like until he dies. I think he will be their nominee in 4 years. Like, I genuinely don't know where else they would. If he wants to be the nominee, he will be. And he's an egomaniac who is, of course, going to want to be the nominee. That's something that the Republican Party is going to have to deal with. And, that for years I saw this issue with Republicans on abortion, to where they couldn't. Abortion is killing them with moderate voters, but they can't moderate on abortion without pissing off their base evangelical voters. And that has just expounded now to where they can't do anything that is not weird without pissing off the incels, the groypers, the white supremacists, the weirdos that they have cultivated to vote for them no matter what. Because if they come out And if they say, okay, actually, Kamala Harris's heritage doesn't matter, they're going to lose the white nationalist vote, right there. If they come out and if JD Vance comes out and says, you know what, like, I'm sorry for what I said in the past. There's nothing wrong with women not having children. There's nothing wrong with women being more than an incubator for babies. They're going to lose the incel vote that they rely on. That they've cultivated this weird group of voters that consists of their base now, and they've really painted themselves into a corner. And aside from funding being completely cut off, I don't see how they wiggle their way out of it.
So in this hypothetical, it is a post-Trump, even if that is in, what would that be, 8 years from now? But I agree the funding would need to be cut off. It would also, Andrew, need to coincide with collective action by elected leaders. So the Republicans would need some type of John Boehner, who passed a funding bill, and in doing so to keep the country open and raise the debt ceiling, gave up his job. They would need some type of coalition of Republican elected leaders in leadership, very likely, to go along with the billionaires and try and purge the party of these freaks. And it's going to take a long time to do that, because it's like herding cats. Getting elected officials all on the same page, especially in the GOP, it's nearly impossible. It's not like you have a Nancy Pelosi who is like, okay, ready to push out a sitting president from running again because she's accumulated all of this political power and the people in her party are willing to listen and to do the right thing, even though they may face political retribution, right? Democrats were coming out talking against President Biden with uncertainty. What happens if he stayed in and primaried them next time, right? What happens if he got all the billionaires behind him and blamed the loss on them? I just don't see the same dynamics in the Republican Party. So I agree with you. I think it's going to take, like you said, billionaires losing return on their investment and these elected leaders suffering massive electoral losses, which is where they're headed if they don't change.
But see, now here's the issue with that is you can't get elected in the Republican Party without going on Fox News, without going on Charlie Kirk, without talking nice about Laura Loomer. You cannot be elected in the Republican Party if you don't do that type of stuff. And the type of people that do that type of stuff are not going to stand up to the weirdness. They're not going to stand up to Trump. And it is just, it's this catch-22 that they found themselves in. They just painted themselves into a corner, and I don't know. I don't know what they can do. I mean, I think you're right. Like, I think if they all stood up and said, enough of this, enough of Donald Trump, enough of outlawing all abortion, enough of attacking single women for not having children, that type of stuff. They can't do it though. Like they just can't because if they don't do it, somebody else will, and somebody else will get on Fox News, and somebody else will be on Fox News saying, donate to my primary campaign against, Rhino Mick Rhino, like it's tough. They have just painted themselves into such a corner by catering to only weird freaks.
I'm shedding a tear of joy, I guess, because I prefer them to lose every election moving forward for a little bit.
Yeah, the thing is, though, like they're eventually going to win elections, and I would like it to be a toned down Republican Party when they do.
It will be eventually. They had their chance.
It's unsustainable.
They had their chance with this primary. If they all coalesced around somebody, let's hypothetical Ron DeSantis, but the problem is he's a weird freak. So.
Right.
And he's spineless, right?
I mean, you had Nikki Haley, but she couldn't make it because the base of the party is made up of weird freaks. So of course she wasn't going to win the primary, And I mean, she's terrible too. But like this weird freak messaging wouldn't even be used against Nikki Haley right now because like she's a normal person. We're talking the way that she's viewed generally, because I think her policies fit in with the weird freakishness just as much, but.
John would agree with you, but he'd get into the esoteric foreign policy and the root causes and why she's just dumb. But okay, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Do you have any parting thoughts you want to leave the listeners with?
Enjoy this for right now. Where there's a whole lot of momentum with the Democrats. A whole lot of things are going well. Still 3.5 months 3 months, I guess, to go. I can't believe it's already August, but I don't stop. Don't stop posting that shit. Keep calling them weird when they're weird. Don't be afraid to call them weird when they start asking about genitals and getting mad about the way people are dressing and getting upset about Sesame Street being too woke and things like that. Like
M&Ms.
Yeah, no, I think the mystique has been broken, you know, and I think that's really important. You know, I think there was a real mystique around Donald Trump and the Republican Party for the last 8 years, and I feel like this messaging has destroyed that completely.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much for joining Politics and Media 101 today.
Thank you for having me. I think this was my third time, so
you're a friend of the show,
an official champion of the show, I think, honestly.